G'day, my name's Jack and I'm an Aussie expat living in Malaysia. I live in Kuala Lumpur and I've been here for about 2 years. It's one of the best decisions I've made in my life, and in this video I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you the top 10 things I love about Malaysia. So if you're local, watch this video and see if you agree or disagree with my 10 points. Are these 10 things just something you might take for granted? Or do you think they're genuinely things to love about Malaysia? If you haven't been here or you're thinking about moving or visiting Malaysia, these are the 10 things that you will probably enjoy the most. Now, every year I go back to Australia and people ask me, how's Malaysia? What are you up to? What do you like about it so much? The first thing I always say is the weather. Now, I'm from Sydney, Australia, and the last few years, I go back in summertime. Even then, the weather has been quite miserable. It's either been stormy, it's been colder than usual in summer, and it's been raining. And don't get me started on winters in Sydney. Here in Malaysia, the sun is usually always out. It's warm, about 30 degrees. It's a tropical climate. It does rain, but honestly, it doesn't impact your life at all because it's usually in the afternoon when you're at work and it only rains for a short period. Even in the rainy season, I personally think it is way better than Sydney and Australia most of the time. At the moment when I film this video, it's 9:30 in the morning. As you can probably tell, I've just been in the pool. I've just done laps, I've just done some swimming. The sun's out, it's warm at 9:30 a.m. on a Sunday. So this is fantastic. I much prefer the warm weather. You can go out any time of day and you don't have to wear a jacket. I got rid of all my warm clothes. I just love the tropical climate and it's a massive advantage living in Malaysia or another Southeast Asian country. The second thing that stands out the most to me is the cost of living. This is the main reason why I moved and the main advantage to living here. I can earn just as much money, to be honest, and I can spend a lot less, usually half or even a third of what I was spending to live in Sydney or another similar Western country. Pretty much everything is cheaper, and I'm aware this isn't true for locals perhaps because you're earning local currency, etc. But the reality is Malaysia is an extremely cheap country, even compared to countries around it. Singapore, on the south border of Malaysia, is 2 or 3 times as expensive. It's more developed, but nonetheless, Malaysia is cheap. I'll go more into the rental market, the properties, and the food, but it's all cheaper than you would expect in a Western country. The only cost that's probably on par with the West is alcohol, because Malaysia is a Muslim country and there's taxes on alcohol that's less available. So it's probably similar to what you'd expect in the Western countries, but if you don't drink, I hardly drink, then that doesn't affect your expenses much at all. So Malaysia is cheap. The third thing I love about Malaysia is the rental market. Now, I reckon it is one of the best rental markets or the best property markets in the world. I say that seriously. I don't think you'll find anywhere that has as much value per cost as you will find here. So this is the condo I live in. This is the pool and all the facilities. It's got a gym. It's right on the train station, so I can just hop a few minutes to work right in the center of the city. From my balcony, I can see the Twin Towers in the city center. You can't get much better, and it only costs about $650 a month. I genuinely think you can't find better than that. I've been to Thailand, I've been to Vietnam, and I've been to Philippines, and they're all more expensive for the same thing or even less. Now, if you compare that to the Western property markets, this type of condo doesn't even exist in Sydney. And if it did, it would cost 5 times as much as it does here. So the rental market is insane. Even if you're staying for a short time, you'll find amazing hotels right in the city center or in nature. KL has the cheapest 4 Seasons in the world. You know, the 5-star hotel, 4 Seasons. The one in KL is the cheapest in the world. And the service is great. The quality is good. You're not skimping on quality. You're getting good facilities. I've got security here. I've got the pool. I've got everything. It's all sorted. There's staff here that even bring your deliveries and food up to you. The concierge, can't beat it. The fourth thing I love about Malaysia are the super apps. So think of Grab, which is the equivalent to Uber. Now, you can get a Grab, like a Grab taxi, for super cheap compared to Western prices compared to Uber. A 20-minute trip would only cost 10 or 15 ringgit, which is about 4 or 5 Aussie dollars. So it makes it very feasible to get around without a car. There's also Grab food delivery, where they'll deliver food from restaurants or even the supermarket to your door for like $1. Extremely convenient. It's a great app. It is a good price for Westerners. I understand locals don't find it so cheap, but it is fantastic. The next thing is transport, public transport, or even driving a car. The MRT or LRT systems, the train systems, are very cheap and they're very effective to get to where you need to go. As I said, I live right on the train station, so I can get direct to work and back very quickly, very easy. They're safe and they're on time, which is not to be said for a lot of Sydney trains or other Western countries, especially late at night. That's just been my experience. I know bad things do happen, but in general, it's a very good transport system in the city. Let's go to cars. I personally don't have one because I don't need one because of Grab and the public transport. But if you do have a car, and there are a lot of motorbikes as well, the fuel is subsidized by the Malaysian government. Now, I don't know any other countries that do this. Maybe in the Middle East they do, but it leads to some of the lowest petrol prices in the world. So a litre of fuel here is about 70 cents or even less in US dollars. So that's a bargain. It means the average person can at least afford the fuel they need to run a car, to get around, do their jobs, etc. So that's also fantastic. The sixth thing I love about Malaysia is the lack of woke culture. Now, this is a positive and a negative. There's a lot to go into here. It's a bit of nuance, and I do have negative things to say about it too. But as a positive, my mind is a lot more clear and free than what it was in Sydney or Australia or other Western countries. Constantly the news, you'll be bombarded with just bullshit, like things that aren't actual problems, first world problems. Whereas here in Malaysia and a lot of Southeast Asia, more developing countries, you don't get the same woke bullshit. So you can actually focus on solving real problems. And I don't read the news. That's one thing that's really helped. I don't read the local news. I avoid it. So my mind is clear. I'm not bombarded with just this crap that I don't agree with or I just don't need to be seeing on a daily basis. It also just doesn't come up in discussion. Now, with my friend group back in Australia, it comes up all the time of just crap I don't care or need to think about. It's not important to me. Whereas here, it just doesn't seem to come up. So this is a bit more of a vague point. Genuinely is something I notice. That leads on to the seventh thing I love about Malaysia, the culture. Now, again, there's positives and negatives, but in general, I would say it is relatively multicultural. We've got Indians, Malays, Chinese, and even whiteys or other foreigners. So I work in a company full of expats, so I've met probably 100 different cultures, and it's broadened my perspective more than I ever did in Sydney. Now, that's probably up to me because I didn't adventure out enough. I didn't speak to other people, but by physically moving countries and putting myself in this position in Malaysia, in an uncomfortable position, I'd forced myself to interact with other cultures and learn things about the world. I've learned so much that I wouldn't have learned by staying in a Western country. The eighth thing is diversity, whether that's natural or cultural. For example, right here in the city center, it's a very modern city, whereas you can go out to the towns and it's very not so modern. It's very different. There's different cultures. If you go from one city to another, so for example, KL is very different to Penang or Georgetown. It's much more Chinese there, whereas here is more Malay, like the rest of the country, Malay majority. On the East Coast, it's a lot more strictly Muslim. I haven't been there yet, but that would be an interesting experience. So there's Chinese areas, there's Indian areas, there's Malay areas, and each city is very different. Whereas in Australia, if you go to different cities, it's much the same. The cities are more Asian, but outside it's more Aussie and Bogan. You can go to coastal cities, you can go to the beaches, but I don't think the culture really changes that much. Whereas here, there is a lot more diversity depending on where you go, which is a good thing. There's also a lot of natural diversity. So you can go in the mountains, you can go in the rainforest, the jungles, you can go by the coast. There's beaches, there's islands. There's a lot more than you'd think in Malaysia, and it is a very diverse country. There's the Cameron Highlands, like the tea growing grounds. There's Genting Highlands, where you can go up into the mountains and there's a resort and theme park on top of the mountain. I love that. I definitely recommend Genting Highlands. So there's so much diversity. There's so much to do, no matter what your budget is. The ninth thing is safety. Now, I had this limiting belief that Malaysia or Southeast Asia wasn't going to be safe before I moved here, but it is safe. I actually feel safer in KL than I do in Sydney. You don't have people drunk, screwing around. I just feel safe. And maybe, honestly, it is because I'm white. Maybe I'm treated differently, but no one has messed with me. I've had no issues at all. 100% safety. There's more security here. I've had no issues. So safety is actually a point that you wouldn't expect, but it is one of the things I love about Malaysia. People are mostly very friendly. Very rarely will you have any issues. The 10th thing I'll say is its location and proximity to other awesome countries in the region. So living in Australia, Sydney is quite far away from things. If you wanted to fly somewhere to travel, it's a long distance. To go to Europe, you're talking about 24 hours, or the US, the same. But here in Malaysia, it's a good central spot. We're right next to Singapore and Changi Airport. So you can pretty much fly to anywhere in the world from KL International Airport, Malaysia, or via Singapore. And I have done that. I've explored Southeast Asia, as I said, Thailand, Philippines, Vietnam, all these other countries because they're so close by. Indonesia, Bali, I want to go there. You can hop on a flight and get there within an hour or two. So it is fantastic and it's cheap. I didn't like AirAsia at first, but honestly, when the prices are so low, we're talking like $20, $30 to fly to Singapore, it's an absolute bargain. And if you're someone who wants to travel and see the world and see different cultures, Malaysia is somewhere you will actually love. So those are my 10 main things I love about Malaysia. I also have to throw in a special mention about the food. It's so cheap and so good. It's diverse. You got the Indian, the Malaysian food, the Chinese food, nasi lemak, the laksa. I love it all. Whatever it is, char kway teow, that's probably one of my favorites, the noodles dish. Fantastic food in Malaysia. You can't not like it. And it has all the Western chains as well. So you can get anything you can dream of. You can get it here. It's good food and it's cheap. I'm going to do another video talking about the 10 things I don't like about Malaysia. So subscribe and stay tuned for that one. That might be a bit more controversial. I hope you got something from this. I'm Jack.alderton and I'm helping you achieve decision mastery to unlock your potential, regain control in life, and live a life you truly desire. So comment below what you think of this and subscribe for the next one.